Will do then. So, okay, so well, anyway, as you know, the trend on council has been anti-preservation and pro-development, I think, in a quite different way than Laguna is used to. And it's not surprising that those two things are connected. A robust historic preservation program is a really great tool to preserve the character that you love. It does not prevent change, and it's not designed to do that. But when it's done correctly, it assures that changes respect the mass scale, design, features, and material of historic resources. And I know that one of the things that Laguna Residence First is very concerned about is these very large projects, potential block-long developments. It's very hard to develop a block-long project if there is a historic resource in the middle of it. You really need to sort of rethink what it is that you're proposing to do. I'd also like to point out that whether the Coastal Commission adopts the new preservation program affects the fate of the changes to the downtown specific plan, which also need to be approved by Coastal. As you'll recall, the changes would allow the addition of second stories to existing one-story buildings, increase height maximums, allow for lot consolidations, and they would also allow demolition and remodels without reference to historic status. There seems to be a good chance that the downtown specific plan amendments may be going to the Coastal Commission the same day as the historic preservation program, which would be quite the exciting Laguna Day. So the city claims that it's following the current program. I'm not really convinced of that. It seems to me that they're doing less than they did before enacting the new program in terms of trying to really gauge whether or not a property coming before it qualifies as a historic resource. I know that the city is understaffed and there are reasons that, there may be other pressures, but it seems that it's really been up to the community to police them. The design review board, I don't think has been really very interested in historic resources. And unfortunately, and this is not unique to Laguna, not very knowledgeable about them. And they've approved projects that were rejected even by the property owners' own consultants that they hired who are the experts in preservation. I was really struck by the fact that the DRB recently, that there were changes to the bylaws that basically say that the design review board has to make findings, not because my impression was people just said, I like it, I don't like it, works for me. And that's not how these approval processes are supposed to work. All right, I'm just going to conclude by talking for a moment about Senate Bill 9. This is the latest assault on local control over zoning and land use. Basically, it allows single family lots to be divided in two and then 4 units to be built where one single family house stood. And if the city does not change its ADU and JDU ordinance, then an ADU and a junior ADU could be allowed on each lot as well. So that would be 8 units. And there's no design review, no public notice, no exemption for high fire severity zones, no requirement to upgrade infrastructure, and no affordable housing. However, and this is thanks to preservation groups, including the California Preservation Foundation, is historic resources are exempt. And if the inventory is recognized as a historic register according to the state definition, which I think it must be, then properties on the inventory that are, even if they're not on the local historic register and taking advantage of incentives and benefits, those would not be subject to Senate Bill 9. So that's an additional way in which historic preservation comes into play in helping to preserve the character of Laguna. So I'm just going to leave it there. I hope that was interesting. It was certainly dramatic.
Yes, well, yes. And hopefully you can hear me. For some reason, my patience with technology was tested more than I thought it would be. I was on the call and all of a sudden I got kicked off, saying the meeting had ended. But anyway, I was able to get back on. So I did miss part of your remarks and comments and presentation, Catherine. However, it's all being recorded, so I will be able to see it when it gets onto our website. With that, the chat function is working. And if there's a question that you'd like to have addressed to Kathy, then please send a chat to me, Merrill Anderson. Although it lists Ann Kristoff as host now, not me. Congratulations, Ann, you've been promoted. But at any rate, I guess that's because I was kicked off. I won't take it personally, though. It's just technology. Okay, so you can send questions via chat to me. You have to the chat button is at the bottom of the screen. You click on that, and then the chat function comes up on the bottom right. And then you're able to click on something, and then I will get it and address Catherine. Okay, one thing. Okay. Date of full commission meeting, even if tentative, Kathy?
It would be mid-November. It would be a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday in mid-November. They meet once a month for 3 days. And I've written to the staff liaison, and as soon as I hear something, I will let people know.
Okay. Next item, can you give us an update on the Kirby lawsuit?
That I believe they've prepared the administrative record, and I believe there's a tentative date on February 4th, but I don't remember exactly.
Okay. Now, another question. How old of a structure qualifies for being historic?
Well, the National Trust set what's considered a kind of 50-year rule. And so usually, except in extraordinary circumstances, like, for example, Frank Gehry's Disney Concert Hall, that's on the National Register, even though it's even now not anywhere close to 50 years. In Laguna Beach, for the Historic Register, its property needs to be 50 years or older. But they also, in several of their planning documents, have a stipulation for special preservation consideration for any property over 45 years old, which has become from 50 years the more typical framework. Mm-hmm. Okay. But it's also not every property that's 45 years old or 50 years old or 100 years old qualifies as historic. There are certain qualities that it needs to have.
Okay, and going back to the lawsuit, what can we do to support the lawsuit? Is there anything being organized locally to build awareness and local support?
Thank you for that question. It's with a CEQA lawsuit, it's really just between the parties and the judge. It's an administrative process. So there aren't really like friend of the court briefs or letters that you write in. The essential thing will be the Coastal Commission. That's where the public input is really going to be essential. And it's not just for Laguna residents. One of the wonderful things about the Coastal Act is that it recognizes the coast as a resource for the public, not just for those of us who are lucky enough to live along it. So I know all of you have family members and friends who visit you here, who treasure Laguna and who envy you. And I think it's important that the Coastal Commission not simply hear from residents, but from people love Laguna from all over the country. And I think it's useful for their voice to be heard as well. And, maybe they can't call in, but certainly, an email to the commission, I think would be appreciated.
Okay.
I was really overwhelmed by the number of emails and the number of public speakers at when this came to council. It was more than I had expected based on previous meetings, and it was really overwhelming the opposition to the ordinance change.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and in your presentation, you mentioned Laguna's downtown being nationally celebrated. So who's celebrating it, and then what are the threats, potential threats to this?
Yeah. So what I was referring to there, aside from just its reputation as a lovely California beach town, is the National Park Service recognition of Laguna Beach as a historic American landscape. People tend to think of landscape as natural features, but part of what made Laguna so special is the historic built environment. It doesn't just apply to the coast or the green belt, but it applies to the built environment as well. And Laguna is the only historic American landscape in all of Orange County. So that's what I meant by national recognition. And it wasn't just the downtown, it's really the historic built environment.
Good for us. Yay, us.
Yay. Well, good for Anne Christoph and Barbara Metzger and other people here whose names I probably don't know. Barry, you might have been involved in that. It's really quite an honor to be recognized for that.
Yeah, it certainly is. And thank you for all the work you do. It's just awesome.
You're welcome.
Now, a couple things. We're going to move on to our next speaker. But before we do that, we are, I would say, lucky enough to have 3 members of our city council who are on this call. We have, I believe, we have George, we have Tony, and we have Peter Blake. So I view this as a really, positive development. One thing I just wanted to check is to make sure that we're not committing any Brown Act violations or potential violations. As we all know, we all become fully aware of the Brown Act in the last 2 or 3 months. So copacetic. So what I will do is turn it over to Kurt Concierge, and maybe Kurt, you could weigh in on this. And you'll have to unmute.
Yeah, I really, I'm not in a position to advise the council members about their obligations under the Brown Act. So, I mean, they did Brown Act training and they know what the rules are. So,
okay. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, well, let's move on to our next speaker, Bob Borthwick. Bob is a landscape architect and planner who has lived in Laguna Beach since 1974. He served on various city committees and prepared the award-winning urban design plan for the city of Avalon on Catalina Island, which I'm sure many of us have enjoyed over the years. So Bob is highly regarded by his peers and certainly has a tremendous amount of credibility and even some juice left in Laguna Beach. And so with that, I'd like to turn this over to Bob, and assisting Bob will be Gene Felder, who is going to handle the PowerPoint aspects of this.
Thank you, Meryl. So how does a person talk about a topic as broad as the environment in a 5 to 10 minute soundbite? Hold on, Gene. Gene, no slides yet, please. Okay, the slides will be a little bit later. I'll give you the heads up. Sorry. So how does a person talk about a topic as broad as this in a 5 to 10 minute soundbite? When the United Nations Climate Change Report says that there's a red alert for our planet and we've passed the tipping point, when recent surveys have confirmed that climate change is the #1 fear of our younger generations around the world, how can we put our energies into saving trees in our local history while the whole world is in peril? Yes, these local issues are still relevant and important to the survival of the town we love. We have to think globally and act locally because the simple acts as saving and planting trees will benefit the world by producing oxygen, absorbing carbon monoxide, and cooling the earth, not to mention providing shade, habitat, stress reduction, and beauty. We must pick up our trash in our neighborhoods and on our beaches to keep our oceans clean and healthy. We must recycle to save resources in our landfills. Electric cars, hybrid cars, solar panels, the list goes on and on. We need to do as much as we can to support local or global issues, but we can't ignore local issues. Otherwise, our town will slip away into the abyss of uniformity and lose its magic. We have to believe that with hard work by our worldwide scientific community, that we will prevail as a planet in the battle against climate change. Yet, we still need a beautiful Laguna to come home to. When my wife and I decided to move to Laguna in 1974, for me, it was because of the trees. Native sycamores and oaks in the canyons and hillsides, rustic eucalyptus trees at the Sawdust Festival in downtown, and the joyous collection of all sorts of other trees from around the world that make up our wonderfully eclectic and diverse town. When Andres Duany, the world-famous architect and city planner, came to Laguna a few years ago, he publicly stated that, quote, Laguna is a place of extraordinary character, built over time by very unusual people. It is fragile, and it is very, very subject to destruction by the forces of the 21st century. He was not referring to natural forces of destruction, but rather he was imploring our citizens and decision makers to prevent Laguna from being lost. I was in the council chambers when he made that statement, and the room fell silent and jaws dropped. How could he, as an urban planner by profession, warn our city to beware of urban planning that could ruin the town? Isn't that what planners do? Create change? It was a humble, remarkable, and insightful statement that I will never forget. As an example of 21st century forces, there is a current project by the Orange County Flood Control District to remove the entire creek channel along the frontage road in the Arts District from the Hive Center all the way to Woodland Drive. This includes the frontage at 7 Degrees, the Sawdust Festival, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Thurston Mobile Home Park frontage areas. This project will require not only the removal of the entire concrete channel, top to bottom, but all landscaping and mature trees that are adjacent to the channel. On the Laguna Canyon Road side of the creek, 5 mature pine trees and 2 large native California sycamore trees are slated for removal. These trees are not proposed to be replaced, even though the city's landscape and scenic highways resource document specifies native oaks and sycamores for this area. On the frontage road side, across from the mobile home park, the entire frontage road mini park will be demolished for channel excavation and replacement. Okay, Jean, if you could show the slides, please. I think, yeah, okay, good. So this slide is showing one of the 3 sycamores in front of the Sawdust Festival. These trees, as well as all this landscaping, would be removed for this channel replacement, trees would not be replaced. Next. Two more of the 3 trees there at the Sawdust Festival. Again, those are pine trees. Next. The same pine tree from up underneath. You can see it's got beautiful structure. It is there is some weight that's leaning towards the channel, which could be removed, but I think the tree could be pruned in a way that it would not be a hazard, and we can talk about that later. Next, please. Same tree looking away from the ocean up the canyon. Next. There's also 2 sycamore trees that the city has planted within the last probably 10 to 20 years. This is one of them, and you can see a smaller one behind. These would also be removed and not be replaced. Next. Okay, the next 4 slides are of the mini park at the across from the mobile home park near the Boys and Girls Club. So everything you see in this picture would be removed, flat to the ground. There's 4 sycamore trees there. This is about a 10-year-old park. There's 4 sycamore trees, and equally important is the screen behind the cars that shields the road from that neighborhood. That's part of the park, and that would be gone 100%. Next. This is another more intimate shot here of the park. This tree is a little bit further from the channel. Maybe could be saved, maybe not, but we're looking into that. Next. Okay, again, park. This park has been, I think, speaking for the neighbors that I've talked to, extremely positive attribute of their neighborhood, whereas before it was a vacant lot and no screening or shade. Next. And that's the final shot of the mini park. Again, this would all be scraped to the ground and excavated. Next. Okay, that's it for the slides. The county has offered to rebuild the park and possibly save some of the existing trees. But the beautiful full-grown shrub hedge that effectively screens Laguna Canyon Road from the neighborhood would be lost. And the park planting would essentially revert back to 10 years ago when this was a vacant lot. And when there was no screening, noise control, or shade that's now exists for the neighborhood. So I've looked at this, and I think there are modifications to this design that can accommodate existing trees and new trees. So it's currently at the county. It's been seen by the Planning Commission once so far. And I'm going to try and work with some others and come up with some ideas so that the trees could be saved and new trees could be planted. You know, in my opinion, with all the trees removed in this strip, the area just becomes another strip mall. This is just one example of the forces of the 21st century that are always working to standardize our town. They threaten to turn it from an environmentally oriented, artistic village by the sea to an ordinary place where trees are either missing or under control. Another current example is the fire department's proposed application of defensible space provisions to our village neighborhoods. The heavy restrictions on trees and shrubbery and requirements for excessive thinning of landscapes will not only impact our individual gardens, but the character of our city as a whole. There are examples in Laguna Beach from the 1993 fire where healthy trees protected homes from fire rather than contributed to the fire. Fire safety is, of course, an important goal, but it is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Next, the city is again considering Laguna Canyon Road. Just last week, hiring an engineer to study a reversible HOV lane down the center of the road to replace the existing left turn merging lane. So the HOV lane would have carpool situation as well as trams. This is again down the middle of the road where the existing left turn lane is. The approved landscape and scenic highways resource document recommends a proposed Laguna Canyon Road cross-section that provides bike trails on both sides of the roadway, keeping the center left turn merging lane and adding parkway trees and a rustic pathway on the developed east side of the road. This solution would create a safe bicycle and pedestrian route along the roadway with little or no impact to either the west side wilderness park or the east side businesses and residences. The last project I will mention is the 1934 Laguna Beach Digester building in the village entrance. In January 2020, the City Council voted 3-2 to proceed with preparing an environmental impact report to demolish the building. In effect, a death for the 6-year-old WPA era digester. The majority of the public was outraged at this decision, and a poll in the local newspaper found that over 80% of the residents wanted to save the digester, including prominent business people such as Mark Christie and even our former city manager, Ken Frank. Fortunately, a generous donation of $200,000 from Barbara and Greg McGillivray to help restore the building forced a revote, and the digester was saved from the wrecking ball. That vote to preserve the building was 2 years ago, and so far, no restoration has been done. Meanwhile, the termites are continuing to gnaw away. Laguna Beach in the Greenbelt has been documented as a historic American landscape by the National Park Service, and this information is housed in the Library of Congress. We need to continually keep in mind the significance of our treasured combination of historical town, seacoast, and open space landscape. In closing, I hope that we can all remain vigilant and active in helping to control our critical climate crisis, while at the same time addressing environmental matters close to home. Let's remember Andres Duani's words and work to protect the character of our town and its landscape from being lost. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you. Let's see here. And thank you, Bob, for your comments. Just a second here. Okay, make sure I'm not muted. There are some comments that I'd like to direct to you. And you mentioned songs. I guess when I was listening to you, I was thinking more of a Joni Mitchell song about, pave paradise and put up a parking lot. I mean, those words were coming to me for some reason. Anyway, let me read what I have here. We, the public, need to show up when this goes to Planning Commission again. There was some good news at Planning Commission. Commissioner Whitten suggested use of root barriers to protect the channel from trees so that not all trees need to be removed. Suggested adding trees and creating a meandering sidewalk. Could you just comment briefly on root barriers and what potentially they could do?
Well, root barriers are a plastic element. Those were put in at the village entrance. It's a hard plastic feature that prevents the roots from going laterally and forces them down. That's a material and an idea that I'm planning to look into. Ann Christoph's working on this with me. Another probably more effective way of doing that is they're going to be rebuilding the channel anyway. And if the wall that's on the tree side ended up being 10 inches wide rather than 6 inches wide and had some extra steel, I mean, you could have the entire edge of the channel be a root barrier. So I don't want to spend too much time getting into details of how things could be done, but Susan Whitten is correct. There could be a meandering sidewalk, which we're looking into. So we're going to be preparing some proactive alternatives to what they have proposed, and hopefully Planning Commission can then forward those to the county. Right now, the county is in process of moving ahead, and again, no trees, and the park being essentially wiped out.
Commissioners also responded to OC Public Works staff saying that Caltrans prohibited trees within looks like 10 to 20 feet of Laguna Canyon Road by pointing out that there are trees that close and closer all along Laguna Canyon Road and PCH, including in the new village entrance project. In fact, there are trees in the median. OC Public Works seem to indicate that there might not, or there might be some room for flexibility with Caltrans. Any comments there, Bob?
Well, again, those are some details that we'll be looking into, and of course, Caltrans does allow trees, next to the curb. The trees that we're proposing would be set back at least 5 feet from the curb. So these are some details that we're going to be proactive in putting forth to the county. And so I guess one thing I'd like to put in a plug is anybody that wants to weigh in on this, that's maybe not part of Village Laguna, that Penny Milne is on the Zoom here. She's with Can Do, as everybody knows, and keeps a good track of trees and issues like this in the canyon. So she'll be one of the key people that will be facilitating any pushback from the public on this.
And before the pocket park, it was actually a storage area for hauling company, which the city leased for $50 a month to the hauler, who is a resident of the mobile home park. How much did the city spend to now demolish the work?
Well, I actually, coincidentally, I worked on the design of that park, and it was not a big budget park, but the plants were put in small, and now 10 years later, they're full grown. So the point is, the value of the park it's hard to measure how much. The value of the park today far exceeds what was spent to build the park. And the county has offered to rebuild the park. But as I say, when you have a shrub barrier that's 20 feet tall, you tear it out and you put it back in and it's 2 feet tall, that's hardly, a good trade for the people that live there.
And could you just remind us again why we're redoing the channel that's running to the sea, and who's kind of pushing it?
Well, there was a pine tree that fell over in a heavy rain about 5-6 years ago, something like that. So unfortunately, that tree was leaning towards the channel, and it damaged the channel wall in that zone. So if you're out there, there's some steel braces that are correcting that condition in front of the Sawdust Festival. So I'm assuming that this whole reason for the channel replacement is because of that one tree that damaged the channel. But the interesting part is the extent of the channel replacement goes all the way to Woodland Drive, which is a long ways from where that tree fell and the channel was damaged. So it leaves open the question, why is the replacement going that far up? And that's because the metal bracing is not even up in that zone. So one of the questions that I would like to put forth and ideas that I'd like to put forth is keep the area from the bridge by the mobile home park from there to Woodland, and don't replace the channel next to the park, because it may not need why tear something out unless it's been damaged, and it doesn't appear that that section has been damaged at all. Otherwise there would be bracing there. So again, I don't want to bore everybody with minutia here, but there's some important concepts that I think the Planning Commission and the city could all embrace, and hopefully the Flood Control District would see the wisdom of some of this. I mean, that upper section by the park represents about 20% of the length of the channel, starting from the frontage road at the downstream end. So if you take off 20% of the budget, I mean, it seems like it's a good deal for the public and the environment both.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob. Appreciate your comments and your bringing this to our attention, and deep analysis that you've done and shared with us. And we certainly would hope that you can keep us posted on developments. And again, it's as someone pointed out, we need to stay close to the commission and to help guide them and offer our perspectives as they move forward. So with that, I'm going to move to our third speaker, David Raber. David Raber is a co-founder of Laguna Residents First and has served as the vice chair of the city's Historic Preservation Task Force, and has been actively involved in many civic projects over the years. So we're very pleased to have David here. And with that, I will turn it over to you, David.
Well, thanks. So let me get the screen share up here and open up the presentation. So this is a continuation of the dialogue that we started at the first community summit, was it 2 years ago? So on that one, we talked about some development, redevelopment, overdevelopment issues. And as you may recall, we started, in that discussion was the Laguna being a special case. What's so special about Laguna Beach? Well, nestled between the mountains and the beach, and only 2 roads in and out of town, Coast Highway and Laguna Canyon Road, it does present some logistic problems and nothing else for traffic getting in and out, as we're also painfully aware. And beautiful beaches, visitors, they already love Laguna to death. I think that's Tony's phrase, and it's hard to justify subsidizing more visitors. So these are some of the things that we were talking about 2 years ago. And then Laguna's unique aesthetics. I think we've been challenged by some of the people who want to pave over paradise, as Meryl said in the Joni Mitchell song, that it's time to move on, it's time to get over it, it's time to revitalize Laguna with higher, taller, denser format for downtown. And when we say that Laguna's charm, Laguna's unique aesthetic, some people have tried to belittle that and said, oh, what's charming? What's what's unique about Laguna? So, as I was walking downtown, I really took that to heart. What is it that we like about downtown? And some of you have heard me say this before, that as I started walking from, down one block and another, I can see individual lots with buildings that were built at different times and then repurposed at different times. And these individual decisions that were made by individual property owners over time have left Laguna with this, what I call organic mosaic of structures where there isn't some, monolithic pattern to Laguna Beach. That type of thing, for those of you who've been to downtown Disney, that type of thing is simulated, or an attempt to be simulated, with the buildings changing, every 75 feet or so. There's a different theme, but you could stand back and say, no, this isn't authentic. What we have is an authentic downtown with this organic mosaic that is pleasing to residents, to visitors, and it increases our property values. It increases the value to the merchants downtown to have a place that isn't like everything else in Orange County. not like, what's happening in Dana Point. I think we probably all driven through Dana Point by now. The redevelopment that's going in there may be the right thing for Dana Point. But if you can imagine a lot of this going in downtown or in the canyon, this would be the wrong step, the wrong way, as a lot of us see it, for what the future of Laguna holds. This would not keep the premium value that both residents and visitors place in the Laguna experience. So how does this redevelopment work? Because that's really what we're facing, is redevelopment like Dana Point faced, like Huntington Beach faced a few years ago. For that matter, like Brea, downtown Brea, if you've been through Brea, it was a great idea when it started, but then now, it really is a ghost town. So let's take just an example how this redevelopment works. This is one of the local developers who contributed to Liberate Laguna, now Laguna Forward, that of how this works. And it doesn't make any difference which one, so I just took the name out. But from their website, this is how the redevelopment industry works. So a key strategy behind the realty investments is our ability to add value to real estate through securing land use entitlements that allow properties to be developed. Land use entitlements are approvals from local municipalities as well as state and federal agencies. So that's the overview of what they're going to undertake. And then specifically, their value add is this paragraph. Land use entitlements are typically discretionary actions that require approval from the local planning commission and or city council through a vote of that governing body. This approval process is a risk that most, in this case, it's home builders, whether it's home builders or builders of, commercial or restaurants or hotels or whatever, that most builders will not undertake, which creates an opportunity for this company to purchase real estate, secure entitlements, and then sell the real estate with entitlement approvals to a builder who can then go ahead and develop the site and sell homes or hotels or restaurants or what have you. So in summary, redevelopment works by somebody finding property that has development potential, then creates a development plan for that property, and then influences city council to allow more profitable land use, and then sells the pre-approved plans for a profit. And there is a business. It's just as if Macy's was to say, our business is to find interesting, durable clothing, and we relocate it from the factories around the world to attractive place here and present it in a retail environment, and we mark up and we make money on that transaction. So that's what retailers do. This is what redevelopers do. So we'll come back to this in just a second. So take a Laguna. Is there room for a constructive change for buildings to be repurposed, new things to happen in that space? Yes. Benefits residents, benefits existing local merchants, it benefits the existing hospitality industry by keeping the essence of Laguna as a premium value.
And David,
yes.
Just one comment. Sorry, I was dealing with some technology issues. My patience being tested again. Turns out I'm a very patient person, which is turning out to be a good thing. But I would say, David, you're not sharing the screen.
I'm not sharing the screen?
No.
Oh. Well, that's interesting. There?
Well, and what makes this interesting is, as kind of an aside, I was kicked off and had to come in as just regular me and not a host. So Anne Christoph is now our host, which means she has taken over command of this Zoom. It was a palace coup, and I have 50 witnesses here. But Anne, at the bottom of your screen, you have should be share screen. There we go. Okay, good. We're good.
Okay. Okay. So is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Well, thank you for chiming in. So is there room for constructive change? Yes. Is there room for intensification? Not so much. It will enrich selected current landowners, but it would dramatically and permanently alter Laguna in a very negative way. So, for example, is there room for constructive change? You see what's happened at Hobie. They had the right half of this building, and then they took over the left half. It was previously retail, and they have tastefully put the whole thing together into a larger space for them. And they've done a good job at keeping the historic nature of the building. This type of thing for a property owner would not have triggered anything in the proposed ballot initiative. This is an example of something that entitlements for the traffic and the parking were already there because the left half was already retail. It's certainly not over 22,000 square feet. So yes, this is something that would be a welcome change. If you take a look at another example, this is the proposal that Mr. Honecker has proposed for the museum hotel. He owns the whole block now. He's acquired the whole block north of the art museum, Laguna Art Museum. So in that whole block, if there's things that are vacant and run down, he has owned the block for quite a while now. So, but what he's not interested in operating the current, most of what's currently there. He's proposing this museum hotel. This is the concept proposal. I don't think it's quite to scale because these people must be maybe 5'8" to 5'10", maybe some 6 feet. But the hotel is proposed at 36 feet up to where the bricks go. And then above that, there is a rooftop deck that actually goes above 36 feet with the bar, the umbrellas, and the serving preparation, food preparation areas. So this is going to be a wide, long, tall building that was a monolithic entire block development. This is the type of thing that the ballot initiative is designed to trigger. And if it's a great proposal like Montage came to the community, has a ballot initiative. And I think the people of Laguna Beach have a good track record for being pretty savvy to identify good projects that benefit the community as well as achieve the goals of the developer. This museum hotel, personally, I don't think would pass the muster. So let's just take a look at the ballot initiative. And somehow my slides are really moving slowly here. This will create a new overlay zone the overlay zone goes over the current zoning, so it doesn't take the place or loosen any existing zoning requirements. It just puts the conditions that would trigger a public vote, which are pretty high. We'll talk about those in a second. It only covers the 750 feet of Coast Highway and Laguna Canyon Road on either side of those, which is the most visible and congested parts of downtown of our town. It allows residents to accept or reject large-scale developments. So I think that this alone is going to give the developers extra incentive to present to the developers or to the voters. When it comes to a large project, we're going to get better proposals. I think a Montage is a good example where the developers really sharpened their pencils and added benefits that we all saw was worthwhile. And also, the ballot initiative is trying to give developers a clearer picture of the opportunities here. And I think this will come with cleaner proposals. They won't be asking for the sky and then having to badger and hope to negotiate into something that they really want. They'll come to us with something that is a cleaner proposal. So the ballot initiative has triggers that one of these triggers would have to be set before, or have to be triggered before it would be subject to a vote. So worsens traffic, adds, that's an incremental 200 or more daily trips. Number of daily trips is a automotive engineering, it's a standard set of volumes that our city staff is familiar with and has used to assess what will happen for certain developments. So this is standard fare, but as again, for the Hobie, it already had retail on that left half, so it would not have added any trips. Less on-site parking than is required today. This is just taking the current on-site parking code, no more, just what's currently required for on-site parking, and putting it into a ballot initiative. So if somebody wants to give us a story about how they can't do parking or whatever, that's just enshrined to what we currently have today. Again, Hobie, the left-hand side, was retail, already had their parking allotments in place, so that would not have triggered this. If there is a big development that we like for a particular area that doesn't have room for parking, there's the parking in lieu fee that the city has had for the longest time, and it supports that parking in lieu fee. So if the city gets serious about that and enforces it, then we'll have a fund where we could develop more parking garage as needed, but we'll have the funds to do it. What I think disturbs a lot of us is that having developers try to badger the residents, the taxpayers, into providing free parking. If you can imagine, go back 40 years to South Coast Plaza, if the developers of South Coast Plaza told the residents of Costa Mesa, oh my gosh, this parking, it's so expensive. We really can't afford to put parking in. Would you build us all of this parking that we required? I mean, everybody would say, what? You're nuts. Somehow Laguna Beach actually engages in a dialogue. Well, gee, maybe we ought to build some parking for further intensification of use, when really the development and every place else that we know of, all other examples we could cite in Southern California and the nation, is that development is expected to mitigate their own costs. If you're going to build a subdivision in, say, Irvine, you have to build the sewers and the schools and the fire departments and all the other things that are going to go into that. And that's what Melrose is for. Well, here in our environment, this is what our parking requirements are all about, is mitigating the impacts that come from further intensification of use. Another trigger is larger than 22,000 square feet of floor space. That is fairly large. For example, the Dornan project out in the Canyon looks like to us that would be barely under this. But something like the Museum Hotel definitely would be over this. Combining large lots. So that is self-explanatory. The lot size is 75,000 for most of the city, 6,000 square feet for downtown, which is a little over 2 lots because the lots are much smaller there. Smaller than currently permitted, 36 feet overall. That is in the ballot initiative, but there's also all the provisions we currently have in place. The actual maximum building size, height, is much smaller than 36 feet in many places. In some places, it's 12. I mean, you look at the area right around Main Beach, and most of that in Lower Forest, Lower Ocean, is 12 feet. You get 36 feet buildings on Forest Avenue, and I've seen an artist's conception of that, and it's oh my gosh. So to have a city council, people say, oh yeah, we'll support the 36 height limit, 36 foot height limit. That doesn't do it, because there are some special places in town where a much lower requirement is in place now and needs to be kept in place. And then there's a cumulative effect. So you get 4 times these maximums over an 8-year period within a half-mile area. And that's the enough is enough principle. It's like in Dana Point, they're redeveloping the whole town. And you can get big trucks in and out of Dana Point a lot easier than Laguna Beach. So there's only so much that we can handle at a time. And 4 times the maximums up here is pretty large. There are some exemptions. I won't go through them all, but single-family residential projects are completely off the table. They're not covered by this at all. Residential projects of 9 or fewer units is also totally exempted. And some people say, "Oh, well, how about 12? We're going to build a 12-unit apartment building. We have to come to the voters for approval." No. Just because it's not exempted doesn't mean it triggers. I'm going to go back to slide here. You get a 12-unit apartment building. It's not going to be larger than 22,000 square feet. I mean, just do the math. So just because, say, a 12-unit apartment building is exempted does not mean it triggers. Okay, just want to emphasize that. There's lots of things that the state is exempting as well. Low-income housing is one, and of course we have all the state exemptions. We didn't have any choice, right? We can't tell the state what to do. As well as hospitals, museums, house of worships, repair or replacement of existing building that's been damaged, minor modifications to existing buildings. And someone said you left fire stations off. Well, good grief, fire stations are 22,000 square feet. That's that like, you're going to be able to keep 35 fire engines in there. We don't have 35 fire engines. So it's not, it's these exemptions are being kind of some mischief is being played with some by the opposition on some aspects of this. So I invite you all to take a look at the initiative. What's the screenshot of what the website looks like? If you go to lagunaresidencefirst.org, okay, Laguna Residents First, all one word, .org, you'll see this come up. Then if you look in the menu, ballot initiative, that's where you'll get to read the summary. So once you're there at ballot initiative, you get a screen that looks like this. You can see what it's all about. Some things that the founders of this believe in, which is including that the village really does need some uniqueness in the world. And you'll be able to read the full terms, definitions, and criteria, it's 14 pages of legalese in the ballot initiative document. Some of it's necessary because we can't just cite by reference. We actually had to recite the various height and parking regulations that are in effect right now because we wanted to just preserve what's there right now. There's also a frequently asked questions, and that's a good place to go as a starter course on this after you've read the summary. There's also the official notice, intent, and title, another part of the legalese. So hope the takeaway would be to have each of you read the summary over. It's an easy read. It's a 3-minute read. Ask yourself questions, ask your friends questions, sign the petition to get on the ballot initiative, sign the initiative. If you need to sign the initiative, you don't know where, just send a note on the lagunaresidencefirst.org. There's a note there. There's a way to send the organization a note. We have plenty of volunteers, and there'd be somebody to be more than willing to come out and knock on your door, especially so we don't miss you, or maybe we missed you when we were there before, and we'll give you the opportunity to sign the ballot initiative. So don't hesitate to ask, okay? I'd like to enlist the support of your neighbors, have them sign up. In fact, if you want to sign up and collect signatures in your neighborhood, we'd love to have that, neighbor to neighbor discussion, or you have the neighbor to neighbor discussion if you feel inclined. Also consider donating to help with there's ads, there's printing, there's legal fees. So your donations, your support is always welcome. And then November 2022, remember to vote for the beautiful Laguna Overlay Zone District. There will probably be some competing ballot initiatives put on by the development community or by somebody, right? This is the Laguna Residents First, which was an outgrowth of the, as Merrill pointed out, the Community Summit. There is a lot of there's some well-organized, well-funded opposition. Liberate Laguna and then Laguna Forward over for the 2018 and 2020 election raised a little over $256,500, I believe. Yeah, that's enough. A little over $250,000 for those two elections. That's a lot of money. That's a huge amount of money. It's more than the candidates spend on election. And they got some city council people elected. They got a lot of things their way. So with that kind of money, they are going to buy opposing ads and by opposing influence. Contrast to, and you know, this is from 94% of that $250,000 was from 5 very large developers. That's what we're up against. I mean, contrast that to say, take for example, Village Laguna, there's 200 donors and the average is somewhere just over $100 each. So that and Laguna Residents First has similar numbers of being a grassroots effort. But we're up against some organized opposition, so we'll need to watch out for that. We appreciate any of your help. So that's what I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions that come about.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, David. Those who would like to sign the initiative, you could just send your name and address to David, and they'll make sure they have someone come around so that you're able to sign the initiative.
Sounds good. Yep.
And what we're going to do now is just open up to some questions, comments. So please send those to me, Merrill Anderson, and then I will forward on to David. And then while we're waiting, after this, we're going to go to the groups. We will see how effective my just-in-time training is of Ann Christoph, who is going to manage these groups and make sure we have a pre-trained facilitator in each group. And so let's start with any questions or comments to David. Here's one coming in. If the ballot initiative was enacted 5 years ago, what projects would have triggered the need for a vote?
Okay, let's see. There aren't many because the criteria was set fairly high for going forward. You know, what was a reasonable development, say back in the 50s, or what was unreasonable development in the 50s may be reasonable now. So we set at current standards. Going back 5 years, one thing that comes to mind is in the canyon, the Doran Live Work Artist Facility, due to the lot combination, I believe it would have triggered. The rest were right at the limit. So that's an example. We carefully considered Pottery Shack, and that would not have triggered it. We don't believe. And then the Coast Inn, it's a complicated one in the Coast Inn because if you take the parking, there are parking implications when that comes back fully online. There are going to be some parking implications that fill into the neighborhood with some pretty big effects there because there's already a lot of nightlife in that area. It would be an opportunity that any of the grandfathered parking provisions would be honored and carried forward the ballot initiative. But the Director of Community Development has a discretionary review process. to make sure that the provisions don't negatively impact the neighborhoods. So there would have definitely been a discussion on that, and the residents in those neighborhoods would have had more of a standing on the Coast End project to have the city examine, and perhaps a formal study would have had to be made as to whether there was going to be impact.
Okay, and we have time for one more comment or question. And it is, can David comment on what seems to be factual error in the city analysis? They say 7,000 plus properties would be involved, but they seem to be counting all the lots, 750 feet from Laguna Canyon Road and PCH, even though most of those are residential.
Yeah, and that number is it would just be the only way that could be that is the raw count of properties that are on either side. We did the count that we have is less than that, but in any case, Merrill, you hit the nail on the head. Is that all residential properties are everything currently zoned R1. Whether the state allows us to keep R1 or not, everything is currently zoned R1 as well as R2, and then anything that's multiple residential unit but has 9 units or less. Those are all completely exempt. As is, I mean, a lot of lots have been accommodated, 22,000 square foot building. I mean, if you have a 3,000 square foot lot, you really can't put a 22,000 square foot building on it. So if you take all those down, there is a very small amount of even candidate properties that are that large. Whatever becomes of the Wells Fargo building, for example, would be one that could come to mind. There's also some areas of town. There's some of the canyon, just as you start leaving the downtown, that seems very ripe for development. In fact, Mr. Honecker has bought some areas that are just outside of town on the south side of the canyon. There's always some deals as to what to do with LCAD and maybe swap their property for something else. If the LCAD property was swapped, then the new use for that, if that became a commercial site, would be something. And then, of course, something like the Museum Hotel, where Mr. Honecker bought the entire block, block long conduit of space. That whatever happens to that could be subject, because depending on.
Thank you, David.
Yeah. Okay.
We're going to have to move on here, and what I'm proposing is we do a technology-enabled multitasking, which sounds very impressive. What that means is, now that Ann Christoph has taken over the meeting, Ann, could you start forming the groups? And then while we do that, there's one last little item I'd like to share with David, one item that came up. But we could do that while you're in fact forming the groups, and then just let us know, wave or whatever, that when you're ready to go. Okay, let's see. For you, David, I heard at the last council meeting that the maximum 36-foot height limit is not an ordinance on the books. Is that true, and shouldn't it be?
Well, there is an ordinance. It's referred to as a mansionization ordinance, and there is it's just a law. It's like any other law in the town, and that's that 3 out of the 5 council people had to vote for it, and if they ever want to change the law, 3 out of the 5 council people have to vote for a change. So there is a law, but there's a lot of zoning that has a lower height requirement. That's really an important aspect of the city. 36 feet in some parts of the town, like take Lower Forest or Lower Ocean, that would be way too high to even pretend that it's the same city. So that ordinance, though, is also vulnerable to the change in city council. And don't forget, it was the city council that thought it was a great idea to build surf and sand. Okay, surf and sand is a lot higher than 36 feet. So city council has, in times in the past, you get 5 people from the city, and all it takes is 3 of them to decide that development is the way to go, and then you have something like the surf and sand. Can we accommodate surf and sand? Well, we did, and could we accommodate maybe another one? Gee, could we accommodate maybe 2 more surf and sands? Now, the thing is that once you have a higher limit, how do you turn it off? It's like nuclear fission. Once you start it, how do you stop it? And with the height limit, you have to set a height somewhere, and you have to have teeth in it, which the ballot initiative would do. Because once you start it, then others would say, well, you let that person do it, so then you have to allow me to do it. So that's what the ballot initiative takes the matter into the residents. In California, the residents of any municipality can take any aspect of the legislative aspects of that jurisdiction and they can sit as the city council and pass a law, which is what the ballot initiative would do, that then can only be changed by another ballot initiative. And we think that the height limits that are currently in place, 36 high overall, a lot lower in some other areas of, say, downtown, are necessary to elevate to that level so we don't get the undue influence on undue temptation, sneak another surf and sand in us.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And I need to check in with our host, Ann Christoph. And looks like you're muted, Ann. We do okay on the groups? Okay, so let's go into our groups, and you'll have roughly 8 to 10 minutes for chatting in your group, and then you'll get a warning when it's time to come out of your group, and you'll automatically be pulled out. So I have with me, I'm being invited to join group 1, room 1. Awesome. I will join and see some of you there. So while we were sort of multitasking and working here, I was able to sort of randomly select some names for our raffle. But before we get to that, I'd just like to hear briefly from, and I mean like, less than a minute, just some headlines from each of the facilitators except you, Gary.
Okay, I just didn't know I was in a room by myself.
Okay, well, we'll talk to you about that later. Okay. Starting with facilitators, who were they, Ann?
Well, I was just asking for Johanna.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay. Let's see. One of the most important things that came out of it was that it seems like it's really important to have the residents be informed somehow, and it's really important for us to all keep informed, and it's also important to be informed of what is going on and who is on which side, and like all this disinformation about the initiative. And it's really hard. It's really difficult to get the right information. And the other thing that Norman was very concerned about, the Laguna Canyon Road and the HOV lane that he heard about. And so just hearing about that is very confusing, because what the city has done was to put that HOV lane in their request so that they would get funding, because if they didn't have the HOV lane, they wouldn't even be able to get the funding. And now they're saying that they could then modify it or take it out. Anyway, so I think it's the information is difficult to get to people, to get the right information, and we are concerned about how to do that.
Okay, thank you. And who's next?
Barbara Dressel.
Well, surprisingly to me, there is a thread of trees running through the takeaways, and we all of the participants mentioned their love for trees and the obvious what they help make Laguna. And so, and part of the discussion too with takeaways was a realization that we need to educate ourselves and we need to participate in educating others, which goes on to what can we do? Engaging more with our commissions was one of the thoughts. And then we got to city staff, and there seemed to be consensus that, well, nobody used this word, but there were barriers there, whether they were pretending to be incompetent and really weren't, or whether not malicious, but that there was malfeasance there among the city staff. And so engaging the staff also, or getting involved with their processes or transparency in their processes. Okay.
Who's next?
Darylyn.
Okay. There were several with the takeaways that one gentleman was interested in the historic 50-year number for as far as a historic building or house. They were also happy around, really appreciated in finding out the information that both David gave on the land use entitlements and also about the redevelopment and how they were not happy, about what the redevelopment is looking at. Everybody, I think, agreed that the initiative is a good thing. There's one gentleman that did say that he needs to read. He wants to read, what the initiative, all the paperwork. I think the takeaway, though, is the challenges is that the city, looking at what the city is doing, the questioning. I think the as far as being forthcoming to the community. And my suggestion was that we need to inform the community of what's going on, that there's too many of us that have no idea everything that's coming down out of the city. And so that's about it.
Okay, thanks. And next?
Kurt Weiss. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we talked trees. We had the distinct advantage of having Bob Borthwick in our breakout group, and Paul Merritt and Amy Jackson, Charlotte. So we had a group of tree lovers. And one of the key observations was that there seems to be an all-out assault on trees in Laguna Beach by the anti-tree people who, at this point, seem to have the wind at their back, which is really unexpected, given that environmental values are so important to lagunas, and it's a little ironic that other surrounding cities are more tree friendly and have been promoting trees while Laguna's been trying to get rid of its trees. And so I think the bottom line takeaway is that we really need, this is an issue that we need to focus on, and we need to redouble our efforts to protect trees before Laguna is turned into a desert.
Yes, thank you. And is there another facilitator, Anne?
Yes, Janet.
Okay.
Well, I happen to have had both Mary and I were both in the same groups. And so Mary volunteered to take notes and provide the recap. So Mary Ives, please feel free. I'll mute myself and go ahead and recap, please.
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, Janet did a great job of facilitating, but I offered to take notes and report out. So as far as takeaways, we had one person in our group who lives right around the corner from this little park in the canyon that Bob was talking about being destroyed. And the fact that it's up for destruction was news to her. So this kind of gets back to Johanna's point of how important it is to keep ourselves informed about what's going on, how difficult it is, because there is so much going on. And then there was also just a lot of talk in general about the dismay at losing the character of Laguna Beach to those who are basically in it for the money. And that kind of led to the takeaway of how important it is to support the Laguna Residents First initiative and get that passed. And then as far as what we can do, or maybe more what we want to do, that conversation focused mostly on parking. And there was strong endorsement of David's idea that the community should not be providing parking for developers. And there was also a support for public transportation, including public transportation that goes up into our neighborhoods so that local residents can take public transportation downtown and don't take up parking spaces, which I thought was an interesting idea. And then there was a question that came up at the end, not a solution, but a question. Somebody asked why, they said that it seems that people are not paying their parking in lieu fees, and they're wondering why that's the case.
Right, wonderful, thank you. Any other facilitators, Anne?
Yes, John Thomas.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. We had a small group, so this will be brief. But I also want to say Gary had an even smaller group, so it doesn't mean that we don't want to hear Gary's takeaways and recommendations. So you should ask Gary what he got out of it. Anyway, so our takeaway.
John.
Yep.
Peter Blake and Sam Goldstein were supposed to be in your group.
Oh, I'm offended that they would not want to join me in my cozy little group. Gosh, bummer. Okay.
Yeah, and they both left.
Gee. Anyway, the takeaway was, the one takeaway from the one other person was the concern about the 36 height limit and the fact that it is not set in concrete, that it could be changed. So that was a concern. And the suggestion was that we come up with some sort of catchier, more creative way to engage people. There was reference to, I guess there was a campaign some time ago about, don't pave the, Laguna, as a parking lot, that kind of thing. So, kind of a suggestion that we try to come up with something catchy. So that was it, small group, couple suggestions.
All right, well, thank you, John. We will, of course, hear Gary's thoughts in our meeting Saturday morning. And
well, let him say something if he wants to.
Okay, well, yeah, you're the lead facilitator now, I guess. Yes. Okay, Gary, you have a short period of time to
nothing to say. I was in a room with Georgette. Who's Georgette? And I kept trying to talk and I couldn't hear anything. I was texting Joanna and Charlotte. I thought I got kicked out. It's all good.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Okay, Meryl, it's all yours. I'm off duty.
Okay, excellent. Well, yeah, thanks for all your help here, Ann. You really did a great job. Really, I mean, with the technology. Anyway, what I did was I went through and sort of randomly selected names, and as I said earlier, for the raffle to win the $50 gift certificate, you had to be present to win. So I'm just going to read the names, and if you're present to win, what I would suggest to just email me your street address, and then I will get your gift certificate to you. I put my email to everyone in the chat room. So just check your chat room. You'll see a message from me, and you'll see my email address, meryl1137@yahoo.com. Okay, so we have John Albritton. Are you still here? Yes, he is. Okay, John, congratulations.
I am. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Thank you, guys. It was a good meeting too. Well worth the time.
Next was, let's see, Paul Merritt. Is he here?
Yes, he's there.
Okay.
Phil, thank you. I appreciated the little group chat as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here and for your contributions. Next, Judy Everbaugh.
Everbaugh.
Yeah, okay. Is she here?
No, he's still here?
She's still here?
Nope.
No.
If I could just mention, it's Tever, Tever, but she pronounces it Tever, but she's too bashful to correct anybody. Tever Bob.
Okay, thank you.
She's not here.
Okay, so next on the list was Amy Jackson.
She's here.
I'm here.
Amy there?
Hi, Amy.
Hey, Amy.
Hey.
All right, well, congratulations. And the next one on the list, let's see, was Barbara Miller.
Oh.
She's in
Well,
Oregon.
She's what?
That's good.
She's in
I'm
Oregon.
here. I'm here.
You are?
I gave great suggestions.
Yes, she's here. Okay, John, Paul, Amy, Barbara, please send me an email and I'll get the gift certificate to you. And so I just want to point out that it is 7:59. We were going to go to 8. So it's what I like to call precision facilitation. And thank you, Anne, for filling in. We're going to collect all these notes. We're going to, in our Saturday morning meeting, review them. We're going to look at some next steps about how to move forward. And on behalf of Village Laguna, I just want to thank you all for being here, for your contributions. Thank you so much. And together, we're going to somehow make this all work. I don't know how, but we will. Okay.
Guys,
Thank you, Meryl.
Yay! Yay!
good job.
Good job, Meryl. Good
Thank you.
job.
And then
Good job, Meryl and Ann.
yeah, Anne you'll have to close the meeting, Anne.
Thanks for
All this confusion happened because Meryl came and used my computer one time and put his name on my computer, and I can't get rid of it. One of these days, he'll tell me how to fix that, and we won't have these problems anymore.
Yeah.
But thank you to Meryl, and thank you to everyone who came.
Yeah.
Great to see you. And
Everybody.
Everybody.
the only bad part is there were no
Barbara Miller.
questions.
Good night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.